In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Jake Johnson, and you're watching The Deep End, Untethered Live Bible Study. That's us. That's what we're doing. It's Monday night, I think. I don't even know what day it is. It's Monday. That's right. It's the 4th, October the 4th. May the 4th be with you. Nope, that's in May. Never mind. Okay, how's it going? How's everybody happening in your part of the world? Hold on a minute, I gotta clean my camera. It's doing the thing again. That's so weird. I don't know why it does that. It's strange. See the artifacts? That'll go away in a minute. I don't know why it does that. It's weird. It's like it's fogging up or something. It might be like nicotine attaching to the screen. I don't know. Hey, Diego, what's happening, brother? Good to see you. Glad you could come out to the show. I'm excited. I'm going to get through this Book of Kings. How are you doing? What have you been up to this day? I had an early day today. I just worked half a day, and then I came home and bled some brakes for a neighbor of mine, and then that's it. Worked on my pistol a little bit, and podcast time. That's what I'm doing. Let's see who's with us so far. It looks like just me and you right now. The rest of them will pop in eventually, I reckon. A little odd. They're usually here waiting on me. That's okay. Can't catch every one of them. Look at that. I bet. I wonder. Huh. That's so odd. I don't know why it's doing that. Hey, there's a Kevin Cox. I knew you'd be here. I was counting on it. I could see you in the back of my mind sneaking in. I'm having camera artifact issues. See? That's kind of weird. Oh, well, if it don't bother you, it don't bother me. I'll just look pasty. That's fine. So I got a little further on the pistol. We talked about this Sunday. This is my new pistol. Can you see it? Kind of hard to tell. There you go. That, I was incorrect in thinking that was a 22. It is not a 22. It is a 32, which is ever so slightly bigger than a 22. It's a 32 long. It was made in the 40s. It's pre-World War. Smith & Wesson, made in the USA. How about that? Think that's worth something? I think it might be. I found it in a bucket. It was frozen solid, rusted shut, and I've been working on it for about a year now, soaking it in oil and working it and twisting it and tweaking it and lubricating it, and I finally broke it free yesterday, last night, night before last, one of those nights, the other day, and got it functioning. Found out what was wrong with it. It was missing a spring that goes right here in the handle. It's a little leaf spring. It's about the length of this handle, and it's responsible for the tension that goes on the hammer and the trigger. And there's a little screw right here that goes inside of the handle, and that screw protrudes through and pushes that spring until it bends and causes the tension. And so that spring broke. I've ordered a new one. It's cost me $8, no problem. And it should be here by the 8th or the 10th. And when it gets here, I'll put the spring in and get me some 32 longs and go to the range. By range, I mean my sister's backyard. And do some target practice. I'll be glad to shoot it. It probably hadn't been fired in 10, 20 years. And I have no idea where it came from. I don't know what its pedigree is, but I do know that it's an interesting piece, and I'm glad to have it. I'm glad I found it. I'm glad I found all the pieces to it scattered everywhere, and I finally got it put back together. So that's it. That's what she looks like. That's her in a nutshell. Pre-war, 1943. The serial number, for those of you who are interested in that sort of thing, is 255220. It's a Smith & Wesson. Anything pre-war has no letters in the serial number. Everything after the war has letters in it, either a J or a K or an N or something like that. Mine has no letters, only numbers. And it's a relatively low number, which makes it close to the source of creation, which is more valuable. I'm debating on whether or not to re-blue it. It's got a little rust on it. As you can see, it's a little bit patinaed. I may keep it that way. I don't know. I hadn't decided yet. Obviously, I don't intend to sell it, so it really doesn't matter whether I re-blue it or not. But I kind of like having it antique. If it'll fire the way it sits, put a little oil in it and see what happens. But if it needs to be cleaned up on the inside, I may just do the inside and leave the outside the way it is. I am going to order new grips for it. I don't know if you can see this or not, but that grip is broken. See a little piece missing right there on the top? And it's cracked. See the crack? I've glued it back together with some super glue, but that's just a temporary fix. I do want to get that replaced. So I'm probably going to order some light brown handle grips for it. Make it look a little bit more modern, a little prettier. A little poppy off the side there. And I'm going to get a holster for it. And that'll be that. Nice little fix. I haven't really appraised it yet. I have no idea what the value of the gun is, but I would put it somewhere in the $500 to $1,000 range just because of its age. I might be surprised, though. It might not be worth anything. You never know about these sort of things. Sometimes you get something that's valuable, and sometimes you get something that's just a piece of junk. I've never owned a 32. I have owned a 38. That's a little different. But the bullets that go in this gun are a little longer than 38s, so they might pack a little bit more kick. I don't know. Have to wait till I shoot it to find out. But this was a police issue pistol at one point. Before they issued the 38 snub nose, they issued the 32 longs. Why they went to a snub nose, I'll never know, because you can't even piss somebody off with one of those guns. If you're 10 feet away, you're not going to kill anybody with one of those. But that's the way they did it back in the day. I still remember those days. I remember when cops carried 32s on their side. 38s, rather. Snub nose. That was the going thing. That was all the way up till about the Lethal Weapon movies. I think everything changed over to 9mm after that. But if I'm not mistaken, the first Lethal Weapon movies, they were issued 38 snub noses. What do you think? I have guns if you ask. Of course. If the government asks, I do not have any guns. Amen. Well, I have 2 guns, 2 pistols. I have several guns, but I have 2 pistols. One of them is called Peacemaker, and this one is called Cold Dead Finger. How you like that for a name? Because you won't be able to pry it from my cold dead finger. I also have a couple rifles and a couple shotguns and so forth. I do not own an AR-15, but I would love to. You ever know anybody wants to buy me one, you just let me know. I'd love to have one. It is a very universal weapon. Good for most situations. But as far as deer hunting goes and squirrel hunting and rabbit hunting, I'm covered. And turkey hunting. And it's the people hunting that I need a little help with. Hey, there's a Caucasian Sasquatch. What's happening, my brother? I lost all my guns in a freak boating accident. Well, your first problem was you had all your guns in a boat. You shouldn't have done that. I can't even imagine a scenario why that would be possible or necessary. Unless you were just wanting to shoot them all that day. Get in some good exercise, huh? Caucasian says, I don't care who asks. I'll tell you, I ain't got no guns. Did you get to see this yet? This is my pistol put back together. I was incorrect. It is not a 22. It is a 32 long, which is slightly bigger than a 22. And I just guessed it was a 22 at a first glance, but upon closer inspection, I realized it was a 32 rather. So it's a little different, and it's a 1943 or 42 pre-World War Smith & Wesson American-made pistol. So it might be worth something. It has a serial number with no letters in it. And if you know anything about Smith & Wesson, anything after the war had letters in it, starting with the letter A. It's a perfect people popper. Might be. I think it's just a run them out of here gun. I don't think it's made to kill people. I think it's made to, get them away from you. It don't have a whole lot of stopping power. It's a little pistol, kind of girly. That's all right. It's perfect for a boot or a pocket inside your vest. Hell, I might just strap it to my bike, put it down by the gas tank, just out of reach, where I can grab it if I need it. But it's a good find. I found that in a bucket, like I told you. It had been rained on and frozen solid, and I worked on it for a while and got her going. I've ordered the little spring that it needs, and when it gets here, she'll be fireable again. Right now, it cannot fire, but when that spring gets here, it will. And I found the original spring to it, too, by the way. I don't know if I told you that. .32 is one of the killingest non-rifle calibers. Well, that's good to know. I didn't know that. Well, that's what this is. It's a .32 long, 1943 pre-war Smith & Wesson American-made pistol. And that's the handles that are on it. And all it needs now is this little spring, and I found it. Here it is. In 2 pieces. It broke, obviously. That's the little spring. I don't know if you can see it very well. It's a leaf spring. And somebody tried to repair it with a weld. See that? and it broke on this side of the weld, so I guess they gave up and didn't weld it a second time. That and the 380. Something had a hold of my guitar there. Well, forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yeah. Anyway, the weld did not work. That little spring goes inside the handle here, and it attaches to the bottom of a little pin that's on this hammer. And it's responsible for the tension of the hammer. And when it pops back, that's what fires the gun. That spring forward is what that spring does. And there's a little screw that goes in right here that pushes in through the handle and pushes on that spring and causes it to bend and causes all the tension. So you can adjust the tension of that spring, the amount of kick that it has towards the firing pin. And it's pretty interesting. I've learned a lot about pistols just by taking this one apart. It's spring steel and really too thin to weld. Well, yeah. Well, they tried to fix that one, but it didn't work. And I'm really glad that they took it out, because if that were to break while you were in trouble, your gun would just stop working, and then you wouldn't know why. I doubt anybody would ever take the handle off to see what was under that. Nobody ever think there was anything under that could control the rest of the gun, but there is. In fact, I think most pistols have that spring underneath the handles. Most revolvers, anyway. I don't know about lever action pistols. But this one is pretty interesting. I've learned a lot about firing mechanisms just because of taking this one apart. And it's very intricate. It's like a watch in there. There's a whole bunch of little tiny machined metal parts that do different things, and it works like clockwork. It all kind of meshes together and functions. Them guys were geniuses that put that together. They spent a lot of time thinking about it anyway. Hey, Kev, where's April at? Ready to get started here. All revolvers have something similar, yep, and most are between the plates, yep. I got my gun cleaning kit out. I've been kind of, cleaning it, getting it ready. Won't be long. I'm going to go down and pick up some shells if I can find any. Hey, Kev, where's April at? Is she coming? We had a good turnout last night, I thought. A couple of new people came in. One relatively new person, that sepsis and trichinosis guy. He's pretty nice. Seemed like he was interested. That's nice. Hope he comes back at least occasionally. Cooking is April. Chicken and rice, greens, and cornbread. It's one of my favorite meals. Chicken and cornbread, collard greens, tomatoes, black-eyed peas. All right. Well, I'll get on here in just a few minutes. We'll get started. In just 1 minute, actually. Give everybody a little bit more time to settle in, and then we'll get rolling. See if we can't get through Kings tonight. At least get through the first portion. Maybe we won't get through the second portion, but we'll get through the first one. I think. Might be longer than I think it is, though. I don't know. Anyway, I couldn't be happier about the little pistol. The only bad thing about it is it don't match my other pistol. My other pistol looks like a Colt Peacemaker. It's made in Italy. It's called an ISA. That's the name of it, ISA. an Italian-made hand pistol, and it's modeled after the Peacemaker. It's a 22, but the Peacemaker was a Colt 45, I believe. I'm not sure about that. I can't remember what the caliber of the Peacemaker was, but anyway, that's what it looks like. This one does not. This one looks like a little police-issue pistol. Utilitarian, nothing special. Don't even have a safety on it. And no place to put a safety, so. Trigger discipline is the utmost importance with that pistol. Never place your finger on it unless you're ready to shoot it. And it is dual action, by the way. You can pull the trigger, or you can cock it and fire. My other pistol, you have to cock it, then fire it. It doesn't have dual action, single action. This one goes either way. This is a bisexual gun. It gets it any way it can. So there's the lesson on guns for today. Let's drop to the small screen. Can I have some words, please? Thank you, Bible reader. Now we have finished building the temple and the king's house of cedar and the little porch where his wife lived. He had a house and a porch, and then a second porch he built for his wife, one of his wives, which I thought was kind of shoddy. I mean, come on, man. At least let her live in the house. Nope, she got her little porch. That's where she lives. And it came to pass at the end of 20 years, when Solomon had built the two houses, the house of the Lord and the king's house. Now Hiram, the king of Tyre, had furnished Solomon with cedar trees and fir trees, and with gold according to all his desire. That then King Solomon gave Hiram 20 cities in the land of Galilee. That's a pretty good trade. So not only did he pay him in installments every year he was king, but he gave him 20 cities also and some wives. And Hiram came out from Tyre to see the cities which Solomon had given him, and they pleased him not. He was not a happy camper. Hey, Indian giver? No. Sore loser? No. What would you call that? Somebody's pissy about a gift you give them. 20 cities and that don't make you happy? Come on, man. And he said, What cities are these which thou hast given me, my brother? And he called them the land of Kabul unto this day. Kabul? Interesting. Kabul. I know a place called Kabul, spelled with a K, not a C, but it's the same place, I think. And Hiram sent to the king 60 talents of gold. That's a lot of gold. And this is the reason of the levy which King Solomon raised, for to build the house of the Lord and his own house, and Millo, and the wall of Jerusalem, which is there to this day. The western wall, or the Wailing Wall, is still a portion of it, and Hazor, and Megiddo. That's that valley where we're going to have trouble later in the world, and Gezer. For Pharaoh, king of Egypt, has gone up and taken Gezer, and burnt it with fire, and slain the Canaanites that dwelt in the city, and given it for a present unto his daughter Solomon's wife. So I guess Solomon took ownership of it as soon as she got it. And Solomon built Gezer and Beth-horon, the nether. That's the lower portion of Beth-horon. That's probably beneath Beth Shemesh, or one of those Beths. And Baalath, and Tadmor in the wilderness, in the land, and all the cities of store that Solomon had. That means he had them stored up, lots of cities. Solomon had, and cities for his chariots, and cities for his horsemen, and that which Solomon desired to build in Jerusalem and in Lebanon, and in all the land of his dominion. So everywhere you looked, he had people stationed there. He had horsemen, he had chariots and chariotmen, he had fighters, he had strong men that wielded the sword, he had men that wielded the bow. Just depending on where you looked, he had somebody in every little place, all of his dominion. And all the people that were left of the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, that's where they came from, which were not of the children of Israel. Their children that were left after them in the land, whom the children of Israel also were not able utterly to destroy, upon those did Solomon levy a tribute of bond service unto this day. So all of the ones that he managed to destroy are dead and gone, but there were some that he just couldn't get. They scattered, you see. The way they went about it in the old days before Solomon to attack all of these places was unlike God told them to. See, God said go in and kill everything. Man, woman, child, beast, baby, doesn't matter, kill it all right now, nip it in the bud. They didn't do it that way. They wanted to be smart asses, so they kept the gold and the cattle, and they kept the king alive so they could parade him around and show what victors they were. And a lot of them managed to escape. And the ones that managed to escape took up refuge in other cities with other peoples, and they couldn't figure out who they were at that time. Then the war was over, and so they lived, some from each of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups. 5 groups that God wanted utterly destroyed. Some still survived. So Solomon, in his wisdom, made them slaves. He couldn't kill them all. The war's over. He ain't going to start a new war to kill people for no reason, so he made them slaves. And they stayed slaves. But of the children of Israel did Solomon make no bondsmen. He didn't make any slaves out of Israel. But they were men of war, and his servants, and his princes, and his captains, and rulers of his chariots, and his horsemen. These were the chief of the officers that were over Solomon's work, 550, which bare rule over the people that wrought in the work. But Pharaoh's daughter came up out of the city of David unto her house, which Solomon had built for her, that little porch called Millo. Then did he build Millo. And 3 times in a year did Solomon offer burnt offerings and peace offerings upon the altar which he built unto the Lord. And he burnt incense upon that altar that was before the Lord. So he finished the house. And King Solomon made a navy of ships in Ezion-Geber. Or Ezion-Geber. Ezion-Geber. I'm call it Ezion-Geber. 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 Which is beside Eloth, on the shore of the Red Sea in the land of Edom. And Hiram sent in the navy of his servants, shipmen that had knowledge of the sea, with the servants of Solomon. And they came to Ophir, and fetched from thence gold, 420 talents, and brought it to King Solomon. And when the queen of Sheba heard, that's Sheba of the Ethiopians. She was the queen of Ethiopia at the time. Interestingly enough, Ethiopia claims to have the Ark of the Covenant, which they do not, but they claim to have it, and they definitely have something. They keep it in a little small church. It's guarded by one priest, and that priest gets cancer and goes blind and loses all of his hair and dies, and then they replace him with another guy. Nobody's allowed in or out. He stays in all the time. They have his food and everything brought to him, and he's treated like a king, but he can't leave. He's a servant. And that's happening today, by the way. No one's ever been inside this little temple, but they claim they have the Ark of the Covenant. I think they have a radioactive something or other, because whatever it is killing the guy who watches it. And that came from a union between Sheba and Solomon. And they had a son. This is not biblical, by the way. This is historical. But according to history, they had a son together. And when he became 21, he went back to Jerusalem to meet his father and came away with the Ark of the Covenant, quote unquote. That's what the Ethiopians teach. Why Solomon would give him the Ark of the Covenant is irrelevant, because he wouldn't, because it's not his to give. It belongs to the Levites, and it belongs to all of Israel, as it were. So I do not believe they have it. I believe they have something else. It might be a meteor. Yeah, there's definitely something. Solomon gave that boy something, and it's powerful, but it's not the Ark of the Covenant. It might be, you've heard the legends about Solomon having a ring that controlled demons. Have you ever heard that? This is also not biblical. This is historical. But apparently Solomon could control demons with the power of a ring. Seems a little Tolkienish, but whatever. It's a story. And he may have something like that. I don't know. I don't know what they have, but nobody's allowed to go in and see it. It's a good chunk of iridium. Will clean your teeth. Yeah, it'll clean your soul too, because it'll give it back to God in a hurry. It's like them women that used to paint the hands on watches to make them glow in the dark, and their faces all rotted off because they kept licking the paintbrush. Apocrypha, baby. It's not in the Apocrypha. I'm sorry. I've read it, and it's not there, but it is historical. There are documents that say it. It's just not biblical. So you have to separate those things. If it agrees with the Bible, fine. If it doesn't, you have to put it on a shelf until you find more evidence. Because sometimes there are things that are not mentioned in the Bible that are mentioned in historical text concerning the people that are in the Bible. But it's not relevant to the story. And then there's some things that are made up, and you got to watch that sort of thing. That's when you get into murky waters. I just thought I'd mention it because it is a thing. Somebody may have heard of it. And when the Queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to prove him with hard questions. She was intrigued. Radium girls, you got it. She was intrigued by Solomon. She was fascinated by his knowledge and wisdom, and she wanted to find out just what this feller could know, because she was pretty smart herself, Queen of Sheba. So she came with a boatload of questions, armed and ready to go, and he answered every one of them, impressed her, and then knocked her up. So you see how impressive he was. He just swooped her right off her feet and then sent her packing. He didn't even marry her. He may have married her, but she still went home. And she came to Jerusalem with a very great train with camels and bear spices, camels that bear spices, and very much gold and precious stones. And when she was come to Solomon, she communed with him for all that was in her heart. She wanted every question she had answered, and she got it. They stayed about a week together. And Solomon told her all her questions. There was not anything hid from the king which he told her not. He told her everything. And when the Queen of Sheba had seen all Solomon's wisdom, and the house that he had built, and the meat of his table, and the sitting of his servants, and the attendance of his ministers, and their apparel, and their cupbearers, and his ascent by which he went up unto the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit in her. She gave it up, boy. She just jumped right in bed with him. And she said to the king, it was a true report that I heard in mine own land of thy acts and of thy wisdom. Howbeit, I believed not the words until I came, and mine eyes had seen it, and beheld, and behold, the half was not told me. They didn't tell me the half of it. Thy wisdom and prosperity exceedeth the fame which I heard. Happy are thy men, happy are these thy servants, which stand continually before thee. They don't even sit down, they're so happy. And that hear thy wisdom. Blessed be the Lord thy God, which delighted in thee, to set thee on the throne of Israel, because the Lord loved Israel forever. Therefore made he thee king, to do judgment and justice. Pretty savvy words coming from a lady. She was laying it on as thick as he was, I think. I think they were just both horny and ready to go, because they got busy. And she gave the king 120 talents of gold, and of spices every great store, and precious stones. There came no more such abundance of spices as these, which the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. They're still using that salt to this day. I'm just kidding. And the navy also of Hiram, that brought gold from Ophir, brought in from Ophir great plenty of almug trees and precious stones. So they didn't just get gold, they got other things too. I don't know what almug is, but it sounds gruesome. And the king made of the almug trees pillars for the house of the Lord, and for the king's house harps also, and psalteries for the singers. And there came no such almug trees, nor were seen unto this day. Nobody's ever seen such trees, because they cut them all down, that's why. And King Solomon gave unto the Queen of Sheba all her desire. I bet he did, whatsoever she asked, besides that which Solomon gave her of his royal bounty. I bet he did. So she turned and went to her own country, she and her servants. Now the weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. Pay attention to that number. That's 666. For those of you that are paying attention, that's the number of man. That's 666, by the way. And it would do you good to pay attention when that number is mentioned, because it means something. Besides that, he had of the merchantmen, and of the traffic of the spice merchants, and of all the kings of Arabia, and of the governors of his country. And King Solomon made 200 targets of beaten gold. 600 shekels of gold went to one target. So there's 1,200 shekels in 400 targets, if that'll tell you. And he made 300 shields of beaten gold. 3 pounds of gold went to one shield. And the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. That is a lot of riches and gold. Yes, sir, Mr. Diego. And moreover, the king made a great throne of ivory and overlaid it with the best gold. I mean, it was the purest gold. The throne had 6 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's pretty high. And the top of the throne was round behind him. And there were stays on either side of the place of the seat. And 2 lions stood beside the stays. So stays would be like where you put your arms, and then each arm had a lion standing beside it. It was a massive, expensive, crazy-looking throne that when you saw it, you knew you were in the presence of awesome. King Solomon was rich, very rich. Yes, he was. And 12 lions stood there on the one side, and on the other side upon the 6 steps. So there were 6 lions on each side. That's 12 lions. And then another row of lions on each side. So there's 12 lions on each side, all together, going down the steps. They probably weren't full-size lions, but they were lions nonetheless. There was not the like made in any kingdom. And all King Solomon's drinking vessels were gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. None were silver, which is unusual. They made goblets of silver in those days. It was nothing accounted of in the days of Solomon. In other words, they had pretty much all the gold. For the king had at sea a navy of Tarshish. A navy of Tarshish. Try to say that word, Tarshish. With the navy of Hiram. So there's 2 navies that he had control of. Once in 3 years came the navy of Tarshish, bringing gold and silver. Every 3 years, gold, silver, ivory, and apes and peacocks. Every 3 years. So they had a pretty big turnover going. What they did with the apes, I don't know, but it's hilarious. So King Solomon exceeded all the kings of the earth for riches and for wisdom. He had it all, pretty much all the gold. And all the earth sought to Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had put in his heart. And they brought every man his present, vessels of silver and vessels of gold, and garments and armor and spices and horses and mules, or rate year by year. So every year these things were, it was a steady flow of gifts coming into Jerusalem for the sake of Solomon. Does this remind you of anybody, by the way? 12 high priests, man on the throne of great knowledge and wisdom, of pure innocence, a man of God, as it were. All he needs is Excalibur, and that's Arthur right there. And I believe that those two stories are one and the same. That is a theory, by the way. That's my opinion. That is not biblical. But you have very strong Arthurian vibes coming from Solomon. Even had mines, Solomon's mines. Arthur had mines too. And he slew dragons, and he had all the riches, and Camelot, and so forth. Camelot being Jerusalem, that shining city on the hill. You go figure. And Solomon gathered together chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen, whom he bestowed in the cities for chariots, and with the king at Jerusalem. Now, just to make sure you understand, he had 1,400, that's 1,400 chariots, but he had 12,000 horsemen. Well, to start with, just because the word horseman, that doesn't mean they're on the horse. That might mean they're taking care of the horse. That might mean they have some job pertaining to the horse. Second thing is, they don't all ride in the chariot. There's something like 4 to 6 horses per chariot, by the way. Some are 2, some are 4, some are 6. Some might be 8, depending on the size of the chariot. So it takes a lot of horsemen to run a chariot. And also they might have teams. One guy might get tired beating around on a horse and chariot with no shocks. So he might have to tag out and let another guy jump on, or another 2 guys jump on and continue. So that's why so many more horsemen than chariots. And the king made silver to be in Jerusalem as stones. In other words, you could bend over and pick it up off the ground. Silver was useless. It was valueless. It was everywhere. And cedars made he to be as the sycamore trees that are in the vale, or in the valley, for abundance. In other words, they brought enough cedar there that sycamore trees seemed about the same value. There's just everywhere. Everything was made out of cedar. What do you call a deer with no legs, no eyes, and no sex drive? No legs, no eyes, no sex drive. Honey? You don't call them deer, that's for sure. And Solomon had horses brought out of Egypt, and linen yarn. And the king's merchants received the linen yarn at a price. In other words, they haggled for it. They wasn't bullshitting. They went and got it at a good price. No fucking idea. No idea. You got to spell it right. No idea. Cute joke, though. I should have saw that, and I didn't. Because it's idea, or ideal, but not idea. But I know people that say that, idea. So you got it. That's a good joke. That's the problem with spelling it, not saying it, though. It's kind of hard to spell it wrong. I-D-E-A-R. Or I-D-E-E-R. It just won't go over that way. You got to say it. So put it in your video, but don't spell it. She got me. Who got you? I must have missed something. Anyway, Back to the words. And a chariot came up and went out of Egypt for 600 shekels of silver, and an horse for 150. And so for all the kings of the Hittites and for the kings of Syria did they bring them out by their means. They all bought horses and chariot in Egypt because they were going for a good price. But King Solomon loved many strange women. There's a segue for you. He's talking about chariots. King Solomon was a bit of a hoe, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and the Hittites. He was banging everybody. Talk about spreading your seed. He was flinging it in every direction, fast and hard as he could. Of the nation concerning which the Lord said unto the children of Israel, ye shall not go into them. Now, this is very important. A lot of people call this racist. It is not racist. It is nationalist. Get it right. God is very specific about not mixing certain bloodlines, because if you mix those bloodlines, they eventually disappear. They get diluted, and then those people don't exist anymore. And that has happened. We're pretty much all mutts now because of this kind of mixing. And King Solomon had a weakness for hotties. He liked the women. I don't blame him. There were some good-looking women in those days, in those places. Some of the most exotic women are Egyptian and Israelite and of that area. Beautiful women. Women that just make you melt. So I don't blame Solomon, but he went against God's word. God said don't mix, and he mixed. And he mixed a lot. And he just kept mixing. Mixing being a euphemism for he banged everybody. And God said, don't mix. So of the nations concerning which the Lord said unto the children of Israel, you should not go into them, neither shall they come in unto you. For surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Now this is also spiritual, not just national. One of the reasons he didn't want you mixing with certain cultures is because they believe in false gods. And they will turn your hearts away from your God into their gods. And he didn't want that confusion, which we also now have. Solomon clave unto these in love. He just was powerless to stop it. He was a horn dog from the word go, and he just couldn't say no. He loved the ladies, and he went and clave unto them as hard as he could, and a few of them at that. He had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines. That is 900 women to please. And his wives, you guessed it, turned away his heart. That ended up being his downfall. It started with a little, yeah, I don't care if you keep that in the house, just don't let anybody see it. And it ended up with, oh, why not? If you'll give me the ass, I'll bow to your little idol, whatever. And that was his downfall. That's what did him in right there. It wasn't war. It wasn't murder. It wasn't evil. It was women. So if you don't think a woman can lead you to hell, you are mistaken. They certainly can. And you need to be vigilant of that. When you choose a mate, you need to be damn sure that she is compatible with you spiritually, because if she's not, you cannot avoid mixing in with her beliefs one way or another, if the very nature of coupling will cause you to compromise, and you cannot allow that. King Solomon took a lot of vagina, or Viagra. Yeah, he probably had to, yeah. Well, they were a lot more virile in those days. They had a little more testosterone than we have. They had a lot less ice cream to eat and stuff. A lot less yogurt, and a lot less frosted tips, you know. But what I'm saying to you is, make certain when you take a mate that that mate is compatible with you spiritually, because just an act of coupling will cause you to make compromises that will hurt you in the long run, even if you think you can handle it, even if you think you won't make that compromise. Trust me, you will. When your wife ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Remember that. So make sure that her unhappiness matches your happiness, because if it don't, you're in trouble. As the wisest man in the world fell prey to the wiles of a woman. Even he, even the most intelligent, most wise, most powerful, most rich man that has ever lived, even he couldn't handle that ass. So remember, that is the most powerful force in the world, and you need to be very cautious of it. So don't marry Democrats. Correct. If you don't mind arguing and sleeping on the couch, then go right ahead. But I promise you, you won't be a happy man. Solomon the simp. Yes, sir, he certainly was. He couldn't stand it. She shook that little ass, and he was putty in her hands. Care how smart he was. Actually, that makes sense. It does, and it should make sense, because that's what the message is here. Chicken and rice. Chicken and rice. I got 2 hot dogs to eat. Big old fat hot dogs. Good ones. Beef. All beef. I love it. For it came to pass, when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, and was the heart of David his father, as was the heart of David his father. His father also had this problem, by the way. So it's not that he didn't get it honest. You know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and the apple don't fall far from the tree, and any other metaphor you can throw in there. I had pork loins and noodles. That sounds good, too. For Solomon went after Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Zidonians. See, even in gods, he went after the woman. That ought to tell you right there. Dude had it bad for the woman. And after Milcom, the abomination of the Amorites. Now, there's a word you don't see anywhere else in the Bible. I'll say it again so that you can remember it. You know who Ashtaroth is, but you've never heard the word Milcom before. And Milcom is an abomination of the Amorites. Why is it an abomination? Because it's not human. And neither were the Ammonites, which is why God wanted them destroyed. They weren't supposed to be here. They're not part of what God created here. They are a separate thing. They don't belong on this planet, yet they're here, which is why some of you have RH negative blood or RH positive blood. By the way, that's not human. Has an RH factor. I'm sorry. No, don't be sorry. I'm a Southerner. We milk them. Yeah, he milked them too, and it cost him his God. So be careful with milking them. And Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord. What was that evil? He bowed to Milcom, the false god, an abomination, which means God hates it. And went not fully after the Lord. He divided his attentions, as did David his father divide his attentions, but to a different thing. David had it for the ladies. Solomon went after the God. He allowed that into his heart. He allowed himself to worship another god. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he was just old and didn't care. Maybe he thought that he was just appeasing his lady. I don't know what he thought, but God didn't like it. Because commandment number 1, thou shalt not have any other gods before me. Not one. Not anyone. There are no other gods before God Almighty. And if you allow that to happen, you will suffer a consequence for it. Then did Solomon build an high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab. Here's another name, Chemosh. That's a second false god. You got Milcom, you got Ashtaroth, you got Chemosh, you got Baal. Those are all false gods. And you got Diana, which is a false god. That's the woman from Mars, or Jupiter, rather. Sorry. The abomination of Moab in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Moloch, which is another false god, the fish god, the abomination of the children of Ammon. See, they had two false gods. They had Milcom and they had Moloch. Two reasons God didn't want them to be here anymore. He disobeyed his father's command to remain in the Lord's commandments. That's correct, Diego. His faith could have been stronger. Solomon must have been weak to fall into idolatry. I don't know if he was weak or if he was just convinced by the ladies. I think he was just trying to appease as many wives. You know, each one of them had different desires and different wants and different needs, and he probably just said, yeah, whatever, do it. Do what you got to do. And that's enough. Even if he didn't earnestly worship those gods, he allowed them into his house. And this is a man anointed by God. You just don't do that. You just don't allow false gods into the house of God. It's one thing to be a heathen and worship a false god. It's another thing to be anointed by God, to have spoken to God and then worship false gods. That's a whole nother insult right there. And that's why it caused him to fall. That's also why other people can do it and seem to get away with it. They didn't get away with it. Solomon was pussy whipped. Yes, he was. They don't get away with it. They just get away with it while they're here. They're going to pay for it in the end. But Solomon's going to pay for it while he's here. Then did Solomon build a high place? This is an altar. He built an altar to a false god. That was a line too far. Having him in the house is one thing. Building an altar to sacrifice to him, a whole nother thing. Because this is still when sacrifices are taking place to God Almighty. So this is like a slap in the face to God, him building this altar, which is the abomination of Moab in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Moloch, the abomination of the children of Ammon. So he built two high places for two false gods. So Solomon is doing bad here. He's about to come down. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrifices unto their gods, lowercase g. So you see, he was appeasing his wives by building these things. He probably built them for them. He probably didn't have any intention of going there himself, but he built them with his money and his heart. Bad move, Solomon. I can't believe, as wise as you are, you didn't see the error of this one. But you did it. And the Lord was angry with Solomon, because his heart was turned from the Lord God of Israel, which had appeared unto him twice, and had commanded him concerning this very thing. You see, not only did Solomon do these things, but God himself appeared in the flesh to Solomon twice and told him with his own mouth, don't do that thing. And he did it anyway. See, that's different than you doing it, because God never spoke to you. God never stood in your face and said, you see this? If you do that, I'm going to hurt you. Don't do that. If he did that, then you would know not to do it. You would know. There would be no question. There'd be no iffiness. You would know. Don't do that. Solomon knew, and he did it anyway. Which had appeared unto him twice, and commanded him concerning this thing, that he should not go after other gods, but he kept not that which the Lord commanded. Remember what God said? You remember his words? He said to Solomon, if, it was an if and then statement. It was a command. If you follow my statutes and my commandments and my judgments and walk in all my ways, Then I will give to you this long life, riches beyond your wildest dreams, wisdom that you can't even use, on and on and on. I will bless you. There will always be a man after your lineage on the throne. Always, forever, as long as you keep my commandments and my statutes and my judgments and walk in all of my ways. This is him not walking in God's ways. What do you think that's going to cause? Hey, April, good to see you, sweetie. I have been listening. I was cooking. Glad to be here. I'm glad you are here. Don't say that even if you don't write the word. People know what you're saying. Jeez. What? Pussy whipped? He was. That's not a bad word, by the way. That is an anachronism for the female sexual organ. They call it that. They also call it 3 or 4 other things, but it's the same thing. You could have said vulva, though. You bastard. Wherefore the Lord said unto Solomon, forasmuch as this is done of thee, and thou hast not kept my covenant and my statutes which I have commanded thee, I will surely rend the kingdom from thee, and will give it to thy servant. In other words, that day that he built those altars, he lost his kingdom and his riches and his wisdom and his very life indeed. Notwithstanding, in thy days I will not do it for David thy father's sake. In other words, I'll wait till you die, but you will not continue on this throne. I will rend it out of the hand of thy son and give it to somebody who's not related to you. Now remember, I promised you in the first days that if you did what I told you to do, which isn't not hard, by the way, then there will never be a man on the throne that is not of your direct line. There will always be a David or Solomon descendant on the throne. But because you've done this thing, I will take it from your son. He won't get a chance to have it, and I will give it to somebody else. Howbeit, I will not rend away all of the kingdom, but will give one tribe to thy son for David my servant's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, which I have chosen. So you'll get one of the 12 tribes. This is the beginning of the separation of the 12 tribes, which are separated to this day, but they will come back together in the long run. And the Lord stirred up an adversary unto Solomon, Hadad the Edomite. He was of the king's seed in Edom. He was related to King Solomon. For it came to pass, when David was in Edom, and Joab, the captain of the host, was gone up to bury the slain, after he had smitten every male in Edom, for 6 months did Joab remain there with all Israel, until he had cut off every male in Edom, that Hadad fled, he and certain Edomites of his father's servants with him, to go into Egypt, Hadad being yet a little child, meaning they got away without being destroyed by the other guy. And they arose out of Midian and came to Paran. And they took men with them out of Paran, and they came to Egypt unto Pharaoh the king of Egypt, which gave him an house, and appointed him victuals, and gave him land. In other words, he took care of him, gave him food and water, and gave him place to live. And Hadad found great favor in the sight of Pharaoh, so that he gave him to wife the sister of his own wife, the sister of Tahpenes, the queen. And the sister of Tahpenes bare him Genubath, his son, whom Tahpenes weaned in Pharaoh's house. And Genubath in Pharaoh's household among the sons of Pharaoh. And when Hadad heard in Egypt that David slept with his fathers, and that Joab the captain of the host was dead, Hadad said to Pharaoh, Let me depart, that I may go to mine own country. And then Pharaoh said unto him, But what hast thou lacked with me, that, behold, thou seekest to go to thine own country? And he answered, Nothing. Howbeit, let me go anyway. And God stirred him up another adversary. That's two adversaries. And Rezon, the son of Eliada. Yeah, Eliada. Which fled from his lord Hadadezer, king of Zobah. And he gathered men unto him and became captain over a band. That's a small group of soldiers. And he gathered men unto him, and he became captain over a band. When David slew them in Zobah, they went to Damascus and dwelt therein and reigned in Damascus. So this is another group of people that escaped David's or one of David's men's wrath, and they survived that war in another place later to come back and come in on Solomon. Solomon's story is a tragedy of what happens when your faith is weak. Yes, it is. Good observation, Diego. And he was an adversary to Israel all the days of Solomon. He didn't like Solomon. Besides the mischief that Hadad did, he abhorred Israel and reigned over Syria. He did not like Israel at all, this guy, this Rezer, or Hezer, whatever his name is. And Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, an Ephrathite of Zeradah, Solomon's servant, whose mother's name was Zeruiah, a widow woman. Even he lifted up his head against the king. So that's three, by the way. Jeroboam is the third. I think Jeroboam will win this battle, but we'll see. And this was the cause that he lifted up his hand against the king. Solomon built Millo, which is the little porch where he kept his wife, and repaired the breaches of the city of David his father. That's the reason he was mad at him, because he built a little porch for his wife to live on and he repaired a city? And the man Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor. And Solomon, seeing the young man that he was industrious, he made him ruler over all the charge of the house of Joseph. Joseph being the wise man that, well, you know who he is. And it came to pass at the time when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem that the prophet Ahijah, the Shilonite, found him in the way, and he had clad himself with a new garment. And they were alone in the field. And Ahijah caught the new garment that was on him and rent it into 12 pieces. And he said to Jeroboam, Take thee 10 pieces, for thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, Behold, I will rend the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and I will give 10 tribes to thee, Jeroboam. But he shall have 1 tribe for my servant David's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, because that they have forsaken me, and have worshipped Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Zidonians, Chemosh, the god of the Moabites, and Milcom, the god of the children of Ammon, and have not walked in my ways, to do that which is right in mine eyes, and to keep my statutes and my judgments, as did David his father. So, there are 12 tribes. 10 of them are going to be given to Jeroboam. 1 of them will be left into the hands of the lineage of Solomon. What is the other one going to do? Now, we exist in a world where the 12 tribes have been torn apart and nobody knows who they are right now. Nobody can point and say, there's the tribe of Benjamin or there's the tribe of Manasseh. But there will come a time in the very near future when those tribes are going to come back together. The reattaching of the broken stick, as it were, which is mentioned in another place in the Bible, a metaphor of a broken stick or a broken bone. And thus, the 12 tribes will come back together, and this will be right before Christ comes back, because those 12 tribes need to be intact for God's chosen to be where they are supposed to be. And they will come back to God. But right now they are divided, and it's fixing to be pretty rough for these guys. Howbeit, I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I will make him prince all the days of his life for David my servant's sake, whom I chose because he kept my commandments and my statutes. But I will take the kingdom out of his son's hand and will give it unto thee, even 10 tribes. You don't get all 12, but you'll get 10 of them, so be happy with that. And by the way, buy a new jacket because I just tore yours up. But it was a new jacket. Well, you should have worn an old one. If you knew you were going to meet a prophet, you should have worn an old jacket. It's your fault, not mine. Well, why did you do that? Doesn't matter. It's in the past. Did you see Lion King? I think so. Anyway, and unto his son I will give one tribe, that's the 12th tribe, that David my servant may have a light always before me in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen me to put my name there. Jerusalem, which means peace, city of peace, or God's city of peace. That's what Jerusalem means. Not a lot of peace going on there right now, though, by the way. They will cry, peace, 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 but there will be none. Revelations, check it out. And I will take thee, and thou shalt reign according to all that thy soul desireth, and shalt be king over Israel. Well, 3/4 of Israel. And it shall be, if thou wilt hearken unto all that I command, here's that if then again, if you'll do what I tell you to do, as I've said 1,000 times before, and even destroyed the world once because of it, if you will do what I tell you to do, if thou wilt walk in my ways, notice this time he didn't say all my ways, he just said my ways, and do that is right in my sight, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as David my servant did, that I will be with thee. Then I will be with thee, and build thee a sure house. It will stand, it will be solid, as I built for David, and will give Israel unto thee. I will give you everything I promised Solomon, if you will do these things that are right in my eyes. And if I will for this afflict the seed of David, but not forever. That's important. I will afflict the seed of David, but not forever. Solomon sought therefore to kill Jeroboam, and Jeroboam arose and fled into Egypt unto Shishak, king of Egypt, and was in Egypt until the death of Solomon. Probably a smart move, Jeroboam. And the rest of the acts of Solomon, and all that he did, and his wisdom, they are not written in the book of the Acts of Solomon. Are they not written in the book of Acts of Solomon? Some of them are. I don't know if all of them are. And the time that Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel was 40 years. He was king for 40 years, and he did a lot in that time. And Solomon slept with his fathers, and was buried in the city of David his father. And Rehoboam his son reigned in his stead. Now, Rehoboam and Jeroboam are not the same person. Rehoboam is Solomon's son who gets one tribe to rule over. Jeroboam, who is not related to David, gets 10 tribes to rule over. And one tribe is set aside to be a light unto God always, for the sake of David his father. If I have that math right, check me on that. And it came to pass, wait a minute, and Rehoboam went to Shechem, which is where they coronate the king, for all Israel were to come to Shechem to make him king. And it came to pass when Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, was yet in Egypt, heard of it, for he was fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam dwelt in Egypt, that they sent and called him. And Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came and spake unto Rehoboam, saying, Thy father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore make thou the grievous service of thy father, and his heavy yoke which is put upon us lighter, and we will serve thee. In other words, make it a little easier for us, and we will serve you. Hakuna Matata. It means no worries. For the rest of your days, it's a problem-free philosophy. Hakuna Matata. Timon and Pumbaa. Sorry. And he said unto them, Depart ye for 3 days, then come again to me. Give me time to think it over. And the people departed. And King Rehoboam consulted with the old men that stood before Solomon his father while he yet lived, and said, How do ye advise that I may answer this people? Do what they want you to do. That's usually how a good king works. And they spake unto him, saying, If thou wilt be a servant unto this people this day, and wilt serve them and answer them and speak good words to them, then they will be thy servants forever. What does heavy yoke mean? It means the burdens that Solomon caused his people by worshiping false gods. It means the troubles that came onto the land. It's a yoke. It's around their neck. Like a cow or a mule has a yoke that's attached to reins that is being held by the man driving him and plowing into the dirt, and the cow has to pull real hard because the plow is digging into the dirt. That's what a yoke does. It allows him to use his strength to pull that heavy plow through the dirt. So a heavy yoke means that they are laden with burdens because of King Solomon's decisions in his later years. And what they said to Rehoboam was, if you'll make this yoke lighter upon us, meaning we don't have so much trouble, then we will serve thee. Well, a good king does what his people wants. So that's what the old men, the 12 wise men that counseled Solomon, now counsel his son Rehoboam. That's their advice. Do what the people want. Speak good words to them, and they will be thy servants forever. But he forsook the counsel of the old men which they had given him, and consulted with the young men that were grown up with him, and which stood before him. And he said unto them, What counsel give ye, that we may answer this people, who have spoken to me, saying, Make the yoke which thy father did put on us lighter? And the young men that were grown up with him spake unto him, saying, Thus shalt thou speak to this people. Now this is the problem with youth. Thy father made our yoke heavy, but make thou it lighter unto us. Thus shalt thou say unto them, My little finger shall be thicker than my father's loins. In other words, I think the young people are saying, tell them one thing and then do another. And now, whereas my father did lade you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke, and my father hath chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the 3rd day. And the king had appointed, saying, Come to me again on the 3rd day, which they did. They came back, expecting him to say something nice to his people. And he answered, saying, the people roughly and forsook the old men's counsel. Let me read that again. And the king answered the people roughly and forsook the old men's counsel that they gave him, and spake to them after the counsel of the young men, saying, my father made your yoke heavy, and I will add to your yoke. My father also chastened you with whips, but I will chasten you with scorpions. Wherefore the king hearkened not unto the people, for the cause was from the Lord, that he might perform his saying, which the Lord spake to Ahijah the Shilonite unto Jeroboam the son of Nebat. Now remember, Rehoboam has one kingdom. Jeroboam has 11 kingdoms, or 10 kingdoms rather. So Jeroboam was probably going to be a better king than Rehoboam was. But this man, for lack of a better word, is an asshole. He could be good to his people. He chose not to be. Let's see where that takes him. So when all Israel saw that the king hearkened not unto them, the people answered the king, saying, what portion have we in David? How can we even call this America anymore? You guys are changing the way we live. You're changing our lifestyle. You're changing our freedoms every day. You're taking more freedoms away. Now you're going after our guns and after our ability to worship God and go to church. How can we even be proud that this is America? How can we even call it America? Says the people to David and to the house of David, saying, what portion have we in David? Neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse, that's David's father. To your tents, O Israel, now see to thine own house, David. So Israel departed unto their tents. But as for the children of Israel which dwelt in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. Then King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the tribute, and all Israel stoned him with stones that he died. Therefore King Rehoboam made speed to get him up on his chariot to flee Jerusalem. So Israel rebelled against the house of David unto this day. Unto this very day they are rebelling against the house of David, and they don't even know it anymore. That sounds like what's going on now. That's right. I'm drawing a parallel between then and now because history repeats itself. We are making the same mistakes now that we made back then, which is why it's so important to read these words and understand them so you can avoid these mistakes. Now you see, Rehoboam chose to be an asshole, and because of that, within one day, all of Jerusalem rebelled against him. All of Israel rebelled against him. That's the one city he had, or the one tribe that he had to rule over, and they have rebelled against him. They killed his head man with stones, and now they're after him. Jeroboam, on the other hand, will be a good king to the 10 tribes that he is going to inherit. And it came to pass, when all Israel heard that Jeroboam was come again, that they sent and called him unto the congregation, and made him king over all Israel. And there was none that followed the house of David, but the tribe of Judah only. Eventually it's only one tribe, the tribe of Judah, from which the Christ would come, the lion, as it were, the king line. That's where the king line was established. Now all kings come from the line of Judah. Used to, they would come from all 12 tribes, or it didn't matter which tribe they came from. Now only Judah, because of Rehoboam and Jeroboam, because of the actions that occurred after Solomon's death, because of the haughtiness and the evilness of the king that supplanted him. Now Jeroboam has been appointed king because he's a much better man He's much more in line with God's vision. And he ends up running all 12 tribes. He was only given 10. But one of them that was given to David's seed rebelled against David. So now he rules them all anyway, even though they were given to David, or the house of David. You understand what's going on here? And when Rehoboam was come to Jerusalem, he assembled all the house of Judah with the tribe of Benjamin, and 180,000 chosen men, which were warriors, to fight against the house of Israel, to bring the kingdom again to Rehoboam the son of Solomon. It's not going to work, Rehoboam. You're just causing war for the sake of war. Let it go. You're not a good king. You should run, because Jeroboam has got something for you, and it is backed by the hand of God Almighty. But the word of God came to Shemaiah, the man of God, saying, Speak unto Rehoboam the son of Solomon, king of Judah, and unto all the house of Judah and Benjamin, and to the remnant of the people, saying, Thus saith the Lord, Shall ye not go up, nor fight against your brethren the children of Israel? Return every man to his house, for this thing is from me. And they hearkened therefore to the word of the Lord, and returned to depart according to the word of the Lord. Thank God somebody saw wisdom in that. Then Jeroboam built Shechem in Mount Ephraim, and dwelt therein, and went out from thence, and built Peniel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, Now shall the kingdom return to the house of David. If this people go up and do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of this people turn again unto their Lord, even unto Rehoboam king of Judah. And they shall kill me, and go again to Rehoboam king of Judah. Whereupon the king took counsel, and made 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, little g, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. That's not true. Somebody's drinking the Kool-Aid here. Somebody's doing something they shouldn't be doing. Somebody's practicing idolatry. Who could it be? It's not a good move. You were doing so good, Jeroboam. What are you doing? And he set the one calf in Bethel, and the other put he in Dan. And this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan. And he made an house of high places, and made priests of the lowest of the people, which were not of the sons of Levi. You see, you can't appoint priests that are not of the sons of Levi. Levi is the priest line. Judah is the king line. You must get kings from Judah, and you must get priests from Levi. Making calves out of gold. That's right. Little cows that they would worship, such as the Hindus do now. I'm telling you, that's a bad move. See, he thought that because Rehoboam was of David, of Solomon, that God was with him. Even though God was with Jeroboam, he thought he was with Rehoboam. So he turned to false gods in hopes that they would prevent Rehoboam from reestablishing his kingdom. He wouldn't. God's already put him out. This is of God. But that's the nature of men. They underestimate. They overqualify. They think too much. And Jeroboam ordained a feast of 8 months, in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah, Passover. And he offered upon the altar. So what he's doing, he's copying religion that we worship. He's copying it. He's making his own priests in his own high days and his own high places. He's making himself like unto God. Bad move, dude. That's going to get you hurt. Watch and see how it works out for him. The 5th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah, and he offered upon the altar. So did he in Bethel, sacrificing unto the calves that he made. These are not gods. These are things he made. They have no power. They cannot save you. They are not God Almighty. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places which he had made. So he offered upon the altar which he made in Bethel the 15th day of the 8th month, even in the month which he had devised of his own heart, and ordained a feast unto the children of Israel. And he offered upon the altar and burnt incense. Now, what is he doing here? He is making a false set of circumstances. He's saying that if God can do it, I can do it. God set up these days, I'll set up these days. God has things that you worship, I'll make things for you to worship. God puts you in high places, I'll put you in high places. This is not a smart move, Jeroboam. You're not God. You see, when leaders take it upon themselves to take your rights away from you and change them and give them back to you in the form of things they want, like the power of the government, like mandated pokes in the arm, that sort of thing, like the inability to move freely about your city without having a passport. When things like that start happening, you're going against the will of God, and it's going to come back to bite you hard, which is why I know you didn't like the conversation we had on Friday, but that's what I'm talking about, because these things are happening now. And what's coming, what you're about to see happen to Jerusalem, is going to happen to us now. And you need to be ready for it. You need to be aware of it. You need to see it for what it is and prepare yourself. There's nothing you can do to stop it, but you can make it easier. You can lighten your own yoke by being prepared mentally and spiritually, which is one of the reasons we're doing this now. And behold, there came a man of God out of Judah by the word of the Lord unto Bethel, and Jeroboam stood by the altar to burn incense to his false god. And he cried against the altar in the word of the Lord, and said, O altar, altar, thus saith the Lord, behold, a child shall be born unto the house of David, Hosea by name. And upon thee shall he offer the priests of the high places, and burn incense upon thee, and men's bones shall be burnt upon thee. Who do you think he's talking about here? And he gave a sign the same day, saying, This is the sign which the Lord hath spoken. Behold, the altar shall be rent, and the ashes that are upon it shall be poured out. And it came to pass. Now, what does that mean, that the altar shall be rent and the ashes poured out? That altar is analogous to the power that is in play. So what is our power that is in play? That would be the White House and the people who are running it. And when it is rent open and its ashes pour out upon the ground, what do you think that means is going to happen? No, it wasn't that I didn't like it. It's just so sad to know we need to prepare. Yes, but you need to prepare nonetheless. You need somebody like me speaking to you, and you need to be involved while I'm doing it. You can't ignore it. I'm not preaching to the choir here. I'm telling you things you need to have in your head. Thanks, I had to shut down my phone to use memory card. I had a bunch of jokes recorded. I wanted them on my computer. Hey man, Jake, come on. Come on, man. And it came to pass, when King Jeroboam heard the saying of the man of God, which had cried against the altar in Bethel, that he put forth his hand from the altar, saying, Lay hold on him. And his hand, which he put forth against him, dried up, so that he could not pull it again to him. Now, this is allegory also. He stretched forth his hand of power to tell the guards, Take hold on that man of God who is speaking against me. And instantly his hand withered up so that he could not pull it back to his body. What do you think that means for the hand of power that is ruling our nation now? That put forth its hand against God's people and told them, you can't be free anymore. Watch their hand wither up. Watch them lose grip on their power. Watch them fall. It will happen. And we will be caught in the crossfire, but it's a good thing in the long run. It needs to happen. The altar also was rent, and the ashes poured out from the altar, according to the sign which the man of God had given by word of the Lord. So when that man's hand withered up, that he couldn't pull it back, then his high place, his altar that he had made, ripped in two, and all the ashes poured out at his feet onto the ground, signifying the loss of his power, the loss of his control, the loss of his fake God. Who do you worship? Who is your master? And the king answered and said unto the man of God, Entreat now the face of the Lord thy God, and pray for me, that my hand may be restored to me again. What gigantic balls this man has. Can you believe the nerve of this man? He builds two fake gods, two fake altars, and begins to set up fake high days for these fake gods, and turning people against God in his own land. And the minute something goes wrong, he prays to who? Not his gods. He prays to my God and says, Pray for me that my hand be restored again. How about that? How about you wither your other hand and walk a long ways off of a short pier? And get out of my face, you fake man, you fake God, you unworthy leader. And the man of God besought the Lord, and the king's hand restored him again, just to show how powerful God can be. Did his calves fix his hand? No, they did not. Did his high days fix his hand? No, they did not. Did his power fix his hand? No, it could not. Only God can do that. And became as it was before. And in an instant, this man was made whole as he was before. And that's where we're going to stop for today, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to pick up next Sunday on 13/7, where we will continue this book. We didn't quite make it to the end. Man, what an intense, powerful, powerful story that was. I hope you got as much out of it as I did. I hope you learned a thing or two. And I hope that you feel enlightened by the possibility that God will make you whole and pull the yoke from your neck, as he said he would, if you do what he wants you to do. Hey, won't you take a moment and hit that subscribe button and press the bell icon so you get notifications of when I'm going to be here. Smash that like button, smash it hard, smash it good. Make me proud. Share this video with somebody you love. Better yet, share it with somebody you don't love. Make them part of our family. Bring them into the fold. Be part of their solutions, not part of their problems. Leave a comment down below and let me know what you're thinking about. Question me, curse me, bless me, challenge me, confront me, conform with me, drink my Kool-Aid, drink your own Kool-Aid. As long as you're thinking critically, that's what I want. I want your brain active and your ears open and your mouth shut so that you can receive the Word of God. And if you see what I'm trying to do here, if you appreciate the Word of God and you want to see it spread to more people, or you just want to help me keep the lights on, or if you feel like you should tithe your offerings or your love offerings or your gifts, won't you please take a moment and go to paypal.me/JakeJohnsonBand. Every penny helps, and it is needed. And I greatly appreciate your support. We do live in a reciprocal universe, and God does notice these things because it is a blessing to me from you, and it's a blessing to you from God to be able. So with that, I will appreciate you and continue this video by answering your questions and comments. Just don't smash it twice. That's right. Smash it once. I've been losing likes, by the way. For some reason, when you guys press like, and then I go through and it uploads, by the time it finishes uploading, half my likes disappear. So always go back and check and make sure that it's still dark, that you pressed it, because I think they're taking them away from me, and those likes help me get out to more people. So that's just as important as donating, making sure you hit that like button or taking a minute to comment on the video or sharing it with somebody. The more you share, the more people see. So, take it into your own hands. Help out where you can. Great read tonight. I'm looking forward to hearing more Sunday. Awesome. I'm going to read more. I'm curious. Please do, because you're going to find out that what I've been telling you all this time is very true, and it is very applicable to what's happening right now. Folks, believe it or not, we are squarely in the end times. This is part of the tribulation mentioned in Revelations, and you need to get right with your Maker at some point in your life. Why not choose now? Why not take that step forward and see if you can find a way to your Father? If I'm that way, then so be it. If not, find another way, but find a way. Allow me to guide you if I can, but find a way. Learn what your Father wants from you. Learn why you're here. Learn what's expected of you, and then act accordingly. Because if you don't, it's going to pass you by, and before you know it, you're going to be neck deep in tribulation troubles, and you won't know how to handle it. Please do take the time and read some more. Or wait and I'll read it for you. Great read, says Diego. Thank you, sir. Any questions or comments concerning the controversy? I loved it. I enjoyed the read tonight. It felt very good. I learned a lot myself. More allegations towards this current administration. Yes, amen. Loving you for spreading the word, Jake. Thank you, sweetheart. It's my pleasure to do so. I only hope that I'll be successful in it. And we got a fairly good start, but it's moving a little slow. Could be a little better, but we're getting there. No, but I got a joke. What are you saying no to? No what? But you got a joke. That sentence doesn't make any sense. Let's talk scripture. Well, let's talk. You start. What's that, Sasquatch? Hey, hang on a second. I'll be right back. That'll leave a mark. I told you I'd be back. It's me. I'm back again. Alrighty. What do you give a blonde that has everything? A blonde has everything. I don't know. Nothing? Penicillin? Yeah. She has everything. That's a good joke. I like it. But what did you say no to? You started that sentence with the word no. What were you rebuting? No, but I got a joke. Are you saying no to me? Or something I said? Are you just trying to make a clever sentence? Yes, Solomon was very rich. Give not call my bad. Huh? He was the third richest person in human history. Oh, you asked if I had any questions. Oh, I got you. Okay, that makes sense. Now, April, what are you saying? Give not call my bad? What does that mean? Oh, Israel was pretty prosperous during his reign, especially in their relationships with foreign nations, correct? It was a pretty good world for that 40 years, and it was as long as they followed the commandments and the edicts and the judgments and the ways of God. When they started moving towards other gods, they started losing that prosperity, that peace. Keep in mind this country, it started as a Christian nation. It was built on the principles, the foundation of it was Christian in nature, and it became a world power that everybody depended on. Everybody in the world depended on us. Everybody in the world considered us the police, the military, the leader of the world. Our president is called the leader of the free world. And in one administration, all that's gone just because they turned against God. Ultimately, everything this administration has done has been against God in one way or another. And look where it's gotten us. I don't care if you believe in God or not. You better damn well know that your country needs to. Because that's what causes a country to be prosperous. It's been proven over and over again. It was proven here recently. Even if you don't believe in God, you should support that Constitution because it affords you the freedom to believe what you want. You take that atheist bullcrap to another country and they'll cut your head off for it. This is true, y'all, says April. Yes, it is. She misread the joke. Okay, I got you. Especially his encounter with the Queen of Sheba is an iconic encounter in salvation history. Well, it has nothing to do with salvation. You're wrong about that. But it was an iconic encounter, and both Ethiopia and Israel have recorded this meeting because they had a child together, by the way. And that child eventually became the king of Ethiopia. So there was prosperity from that meeting. And not only that, Sheba learned a lot of things from Solomon that she took back to her country and implemented in her country. And for a while, Ethiopia was a pretty prosperous place itself in its own right. It has some of the most fantastic architecture known to man. They have churches hewn out of stone straight down. Like they take a mountain, like a mesa, and then cut a church out of it in the middle. And then inside of it. And the whole thing, as ornate as it is, as architecture gets, is all carved in one carving, inside and out. Nobody that we know of can do that. Nobody ever has been able to do that except for them. So they knew things even we don't know. Solomon probably had a hand in that. Because it shows wisdom that we do not have. Look for those churches, by the way. I forget what they're called, but there's like 7 of them, and they're all hewn straight down in solid rock. And they're some of the most beautiful architecture you've ever seen, and they're all one carving. All the rooms inside, all of the carvings against the wall, all of the structure, they just carved it out, and then layer by layer, like it was done with a laser printer or like a 3D printer, is what it looks like. There's no other way. You'd have to visualize the whole thing and keep it in your head while you're carving it in order to do it right the first time, because if you make a mistake, it's all gone. Oh, I get it. That's why they have called people albinos. Is that racist? Hey, albino. No, that's beaner. Sorry. Wrong word. No, not albino. I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? It's unfortunate that the women he married led him to the worship of other false gods. Yeah, that is unfortunate. Albino. Yeah, I got the word, but what is she talking about, albino? Because Ethiopia and Solomon had a child? No, he was probably black. His mother was black. So at very least he was mixed, But he wasn't an albino, I don't think. I haven't heard anything about that. I think albino is a skin pigment disorder. I think that's what being an albino is. I think your pigment just doesn't work. So you have no pigment, which the absence of pigment is white. So where do albinos come from? It's a skin pigment disorder, and that disorder is hereditary. So it only runs in one bloodline. But that's the only reason. I don't know of anything biblical that would explain an albino, other than it's just a defect in the DNA of a certain bloodline. It could be the mark of Cain. Who knows? But there'd be a whole lot more of them because he had a lot of children. So I doubt that. Where do albinos come from? It's just a defect. They don't come from anywhere. They're not one specific race of people. It's a defect in the pigmentation of the skin. It happens in utero. And it's rare. Doesn't happen all the time. There's all kinds of things that are albino, by the way. There's albino deer and albino alligators and albino cockatiels and albino people. So it's across all species. That happens to everybody. It's just the whatever reason the pigment gene doesn't turn on and it just doesn't color anything. So it's a recessive trait carried in the genes. I said that. It's excessively rare, but more common in inbreeding, probably because that causes things to be turned off rather than turned on. He and his father had a lot of women. Yes, they did, and that's an understatement, by the way. They had a lot of women. Put it this way, that guy must have stayed sore. I've seen frogs and bugs that were albinos. Yep. Well, I've seen alligators and deer and people and several other things. I just keep walking away from the camera, don't I? I'm being all casual because I need a cigarette. Chapped. Both Solomon and David sinned, yes. Difference is that David sinned, yet he repented. And throughout his life, he kept believing and maintained his belief and trust in the one true God, Almighty, the God of Israel. Or the God of Illinois, according to that. Really? All because of inbreeding. Not all because of inbreeding. It's just more common in inbreeding. inbreeding causes retardation, meaning that certain things don't work properly or certain things get muddled up in the DNA because it takes two sets of genes to make a perfect human. And when you have one set of genes, it just kind of confuses everything. So the closer you are in relation, the more problems it causes in the offspring. And one of those problems could be albinoism, but not always. But being an albino is just a gene that doesn't turn on. That gene is responsible for the pigment of your skin. So for whatever reason, in utero, it doesn't turn on and you're born white because you have no color, because it didn't tell your genes to make color when it was making you. You see, every sperm has a complete set of instructions to make a fully functional human being, from the top of his head down to the bottom of his toes, every detail in one sperm. And sometimes that information gets a little corrupted and everything doesn't get made. In this case, it's color that doesn't get made. That's all that an albino is. Hope that helps. No, because of inbreeding, it's carried in various families, in genetic lines. So inbreeding can magnify the likelihood that one would be albino, but it isn't the cause of it. It's just, it helps it along. I don't know what the cause of it is, or if there's a cause of it. It's just a gene that don't turn on for whatever reason. See, every gene in your body has an on state and an off state. You turn on one gene, all of a sudden you get fat. Or you turn on one gene and all of a sudden you grow facial hair. Or you turn it off and your hair falls out. Or you lose a lot of weight. You know, that sort of thing. Or your eyes turn from brown to green like my sister's did. My sister used to be a brown-eyed girl. She's no longer brown-eyed because she lost a lot of blood at one time and one of her genes turned off and now her eyes are blue. Interesting, huh? But they used to be brown, I remember. I've got pictures to prove it. White people aren't albino or even half albino. They're just white people. Right. Yeah, white people have nothing to do with albinoism. It's just a thing. Solomon, on the other hand, despite his reign being prosperous and perfect, peaceful, his personal choices of women and concubines led to apostasy and ended worshiping and sacrifice to idols. And that his women worship. Yeah, idols that his women worship. Yes. Oh, okay. Why I thought that. I don't know why I thought that. Probably because white and albino are the same word. But nope. It's just a gene that don't turn on. Black people can be albino too. In fact, all races and all breeds and all species can be albino. It just matters if that gene doesn't turn on. For whatever reason. Could be a sun flare that day. Who knows why a certain gene doesn't work? Could be that the mother didn't have enough vitamin D. You know, who knows? I sure have enjoyed it tonight. It is 10:30 and I got to get up early in the morning. So I love you guys with all my heart. Thank you so much for the conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed the questions and comments. Keep it coming, guys. Support where you can. Talk where you can. Be smart where you can. And let's make this thing happen for God. That's why we're here. I love you with all my heart. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on Wednesday with some chill stream.